Hello, everyone, and good afternoon to Divergent Minds, our Facebook platform that talks about everything related to mental health. My name is Dr. Ashman Sood. I'm a board-certified child and adolescent psychiatrist, and I'm joined along my co-host and colleague, who is audio today, as he makes his way up to SSM Health Treffert Studios, Dr. Jeremy Chapman. Dr. Chapman, how are you doing?
Hey everybody, it's probably for the best that I'm just audio because this so we can focus on Dr. Sood's smiling, shining face without being distracted by my haggardly 40-year-old self.
Well, I would disagree. You also have a very smiley, shiny face, and 40 doesn't look your age whatsoever. But that is not what we're talking about today. Usually, our show, it's kind of a jubilation and a curiosity and a fun kind of experience to learn about mental health. But today, we find that it is important to delve into a really poignant topic. And that topic is the overall idea of being exposed to violent media. And we do this knowing full well of the backdrop of the Israeli-Hamas conflict. And in that conflict, today we will not be talking about one side or the other. We will not be talking about politics. Today's focus will be talking about what exposure to war and violent media does to the brain, does to children and teens and adults, and how do we navigate that? Dr. Chapman, would you like to add to it?
No, that's a beautiful intro, and I'll also say, I noticed that you clarified that we're not going to be taking sides or getting into personal beliefs and opinions, and that's actually a really nice lead-in to one of the topics that I think is very pertinent here, which is that people often feel pressured to take a stand and declare which side of something that they believe in, whether it's a political conflict or war, or even some sort of, celebrity gossip. People, young people and old people often feel pressured to come out and say, you know what, I'm advocating for this. This was a George Floyd too. This is my opinion on this, and I'm shouting it loud and clear. And those who disagree with you might unfollow you, unfriend you, or cast judgment upon you. And those who are upset that you did not take a stand may also look down upon you because they expected you to speak up and represent, your beliefs. I don't know if you felt that ever.
Definitely. I think there was a tweet that was noted recently of your silence is noted, right? And when you think about these things and get into this of peer acceptance and peer kind of group think, how does a teen navigate that? How does a kid navigate that?
Right.
And so there's
first of all, go ahead.
No, I mean there's a lot. Just
a question, and then you kept talking. I thought that was a question. That was a rhetorical question.
This is the hard part of audio, right? You can't see what I'm about to jump into. But yeah, answer, go for it.
Oh, okay. So you passed it over to me. Okay. And so, no, I was going to say the book called Behind Their Screens, which is a relatively new book, written by two very intelligent psychologists. One of them, I believe, is Emily Weinstein, but don't quote me on that name. But the book's title is Behind Their Screens. I've been listening to the audiobook version of it. It's got great details about the subtleties, nuances that teens face. And they interviewed many young people as they wrote the book, and they have direct quotes from them. But really, there's so much beneath the surface that adults wouldn't even think about that kids have to face, and the pressures that they face. First and foremost is it seems like my friends or the people who I want to associate with are feeling this type of way about this particular issue. Therefore, even if I don't understand what the issue is about, I'm going to either repost their opinions or make a post of my own sharing those opinions. And that's just going to guide me. And in some cases, that will force me to go and read up about the situation so that I feel more informed about it. But I think in many cases, people may not even feel the time or ability to really understand stuff. So they'll just kind of adopt the viewpoints of those who they tend to agree with on stuff.
You're absolutely, absolutely right, right? I'm a 32-year-old physician who's gone to medical school, who's gone to residency, fellowship.
Oh man, you're so young.
We're giving out ages, right? And I consider myself an astute learner, right? This, just using the Israeli-Hamas conflict, has taken me hours looking through sources and just trying to navigate it, understanding this 75 plus year conflict. And I can't imagine a teenager developmentally who can sit with such a complex topic and then is constantly shown images over and over, right, on TikTok or Snapchat or Instagram, of war, both on both sides, and then has to meet with their friends who, we know from a developmental perspective, teenagers and children, the way they view the world, because, and all of us go through this, is often very black and white because that's the easiest to do. The complexities grow over time. I viewed the world that way in high school, and then slowly in college, and then slowly over time, I matured because that's what our brains do. And I began to learn, wow, there's a lot more nuances to this. You put a teenager who doesn't have that ability yet, and then is told to pick a side after they're exposed to a lot of this violent media. And I think that adds on there, right? That sense of like, well, if a lot of my friends are picking this, I have to pick this. Yeah. And that can feel really either I'm a part of something or I don't feel comfortable with this, but I'm being pulled in this direction.
Yeah. It's, and then on top of that, people's opinions evolve over time. I don't know if can you still hear me right now, by the way?
Yes.
Okay. New information comes out, new twists and turns happen with the plot, whether it's, again, politics, gossip, either celebrity gossip or even spilling the tea within your own school, your own friend group. And so things change over time, but you can get screenshotted with one of your opinions from the past, or maybe a picture of you holding up a sign or in front of a certain flag or something like that. And now that opinion, that moment when you had that opinion, is immortalized and can be used against you in the future. Super crazy. And then to add this, I know you'd asked me for guidance, but I'm still digging into all the challenges first. To add to all of this, even what you call something can be called into question. So we've been using the term so far, Israel-Hamas war, Israel-Hamas conflict. We talked briefly before this about what we should refer it to. I recall when I visited my brother in Vietnam. He lived there for a fellowship one year. I went and saw him, and we saw the American War Museum. And I thought, I have never heard that term. But of course, if you live in Vietnam, you don't call it the Vietnam War, call it the American War. Man, that was really just kind of caught me off guard. It was a kind of like a aha moment for me. People have different words for stuff, and you have to, so either you have to pick one and go with it, or you have to be very general and vague. Should we just call this the conflict in the Middle East?
Right.
So many dimensions to it.
So many dimensions, and then you're asking children and teenagers, what to do about it, right? How do you feel about it? And when I was on TikTok, going through, TikTok lives, which is a feature on TikTok where you can see people actively discussing with other people. There are so many conversations happening, and there's all these different age groups. There's teenagers talking to adults, and adults by teenagers, and they're saying, pick a side, pick a side, pick a side. And I can't imagine that type of pressure on a kid or a teenager to do that. And then look back 10 years from now and say, that digital footprint has been left. And how could that hurt, right? So I think this is a perfect time. And if you're listening in, my name is Dr. Sood. I'm with Dr. Chapman. We're both board certified child and adolescent psychiatrists. talk everything mental health related. And today we are talking about what exposure to wartime conflict on social media does to teenagers and children. And maybe we can talk about some of the consequences outside of, before we get into the 4 Rs, which Dr. Chapman has coined in terms of hear that, some of the consequences, right? What are the psychological consequences besides peer rejection that could occur if you're exposed to a lot of like constant violent media?
Oh man, I mean, you have trauma. I mean, it's a very, very legitimate use of that word. And depending on how deeply the trauma affects you, you may have a trauma or stressor-related disorder, which is a DSM, which is a diagnosis. Or you may end up having a PTSD type of a thing where you, by secondhand witness of tragic and terrifying and scary events, cause you to have, the classic symptoms of PTSD, which include avoidance, hypervigilance, nightmares, flashbacks, social withdrawal, and all of that can apply. And I will admit to you, last night I made a mistake. I watched a video that was posted on BBC, and I got that warning, at the beginning, warning, this video contains graphic and or disturbing content. Now, why do I not stop it then and go somewhere else? Because, it's this morbid curiosity. It's why people are so interested in the Titanic. I wanted to see. Some part of me wanted to see it and get that whatever emotional, arousal or salience that comes with that. And man, I saw really disturbing image last night that it's going to be hard for me to unsee. And I don't want to describe it graphically, but it was very, very, gosh, I just thought, man, and I've seen, look, I've gone through medical school. I did, cadaver lab, right? We dissected a human. I still, was disturbed by some of the stuff I saw. I can imagine someone without that kind of prior exposure, or certainly a child seeing that, to stick with you for a long time. So trauma is one of the consequences. Social rejection is one of the potential consequences. Of course, just on a more surface level thing, just anxiety, right? Is this going to happen to me? Could this happen to me? If you are of one of those particular ethnicities or nationalities, and you're not in that area, such as in America, you're wondering if this is going to spread to you. Are you going to be the victim of hate crimes? And I think that's just a kind of in the moment type of anxiety. I don't know what else comes to mind for you.
Yeah, I mean, that nails it, right? A sense of hopelessness. When we think about development, right? Children don't really understand or fathom the permanence of death until 6 or 7. And when you get to that age, it's a crisis of kind of identity. Like, wait, mom and dad could die and they could not come back. So if I'm seeing a lot of that, that's happening to people. Could that happen to me? And that is a really scary and anxiety-provoking thing. So I often, think about what that constant exposure to a 6 or 7-year-old could be, right? And what anxiety is a sense of hopelessness and inability to escape a certain situation. And when you're bombarded by constant images of really scary situations and you can't escape that, right? It's showing up in your feed constantly. And you have some form of, that's how you connect with people and things like that. That can create a sense of hopelessness, which leads to that overwhelming anxiety, right? So you have to kind of think about, I was talking to my partner about this last night, and she was on her phone and I was on my phone, and we were talking about, one of the atrocities that occurred in this conflict. And then we both kind of stopped and said, is this helping us right now? This is really, it's one to be aware of it, but the deeper you go, the more hopeless that felt. And it ruined our sleep, similar to what you experienced. So I want to stop there for a second. We did get a question, which our audience asked, with so much attention going to short form videos, which means kids are viewing so many different videos in a short amount of time, how does a parent try to keep objectively bad information or clearly inappropriate information from coming across a child's screen? How should I be informing my child proactively to maybe protect against bad information? So I think that is, as a parent, Jeremy, how would you
Yeah.
approach that?
Well, so of course, the most sweeping way to avoid them encountering stuff on their screens is to deprive them of screens. And there have been some recommendations that we take a break from all screens, disconnect from all digital media for some period of time. Now, how long that would be or what circumstances we would resume it are disagreed upon. And again, I try to stay practical with things. That's going to be very hard case to make to really a kid of any age, not to mention adults, by the way, to just spontaneously say we're going to not go on our screen. Now, beyond that, the stuff is pervasive, and it can catch you off guard. And the problem is, oftentimes, you kind of build your algorithms as you go. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But the more you watch of something, the more that particular social media platform is going to serve you of that same type of content because it thinks that you like it. And so just, in a small little thing you can do, I mentioned this before, if you are warned that something you are about to see is going to be disturbing, you can stop and take a moment right there and make a choice to not expose yourself to it, to resist that temptation that many people have. And hopefully, most things will give you such a warning. But when it comes at you really fast, and it's short form content like that viewer said, it's really, really hard to know what's going to pop up next. And
Sure.
I don't know if you have thoughts on what your take is on that, Dr.
Yeah. I mean, exposure to violence, right? Any type of violent media, if it's constant, right? There's fantastic, you have to think of the context. If a child sees, violent media on a video game like Fortnite at a very young age, right, 5 or 6, but it's fantastical, it's not relatable to the real world, it's very different than seeing people like you or me being shot at or being killed, or mother and children, being separated. That is very realistic. Um, and then that's repeated over and over, and then you see adults really worried about it, right? Adult children who are seeing adults really scared constantly, or bombarded by these images as well, because the adults are going to be often taking in a lot of these images and also responding with hopelessness and anxiety.
Yeah.
They're going to use that as a relatable kind of experience and said, oh, okay, the person who takes care of me is also really scared, also really worried.
Yeah.
So maybe I need to be worried. Now, that's not to say to downplay your feelings with your kids. It's okay to say, sometimes I get scared, sometimes I get worried, but it's very easy, as we have explained in this podcast today, to get overwhelmed by this even as an adult. Very, very easy. I think this would be a great transition period to kind of talk about the 4 R's you came up with, because I presume there are parents and teachers and maybe even teens watching this who are saying, okay, we know this isn't good for us. We know this has a lot of consequences to our psyche. What should we do about it?
Yeah, thanks for teeing that up. So I have been asked by friends and by some of the schools and community organizations near me and some colleagues about, my opinion on this. What should we be telling kids? How should we be guiding kids? And there's very, some traditional recommendations, some broad recommendations, and I thought maybe can I come up with something to go with this? Maybe some kind of a fresh spin on stuff that maybe people aren't considering. And so the 4 R's that I kind of organized my thoughts into are as follows. Gosh, let's hope I remember them. Step 1 is to react. Step 2 is to research. Step 3 is to reflect. And step 4 is to reset. So just to briefly touch on each of those for about 30 seconds. To react means to create space for any type of reaction that you or your child have. You might see anger, you might see sadness, you might see fear, confusion, cynicism about the world, doomsday or hopelessness, like you had mentioned, or maybe even no reaction, which in and of itself is a reaction, that kind of no emotional response. But you have to allow your kid to to feel what they feel and to be comfortable sharing that with you without casting judgment upon them. Don't say, aren't you scared about this? Or why are you scared about this? Either of those is going to discourage them from being open with you. And as you mentioned before, Ash, also, as a parent, they are taking cues from us. They are watching our reactions. And that doesn't mean that we should be totally stoic about it. We should allow them to know how we feel about stuff, but it's also up to us to kind of control how much we share with them, to what degree we feel affected by the stuff. But yeah, we absolutely should allow for both parties to emote. Okay, once you've reacted and made space for that, we need to research, meaning try to find meaningful, accurate, evidence-based, and credible information and facts about the thing. Okay, that may involve looking up viewpoints from multiple angles to just get inside the head of people who've experienced this from different, upbringings and perspectives. Of credibilities with different news and media outlets. There's the larger news organizations. I tend to gravitate towards BBC. I like NPR. And then some of them have a lot more of a clear lean towards them, a political or ideological flavor to them. And so, whatever you have exposed yourself to, your child is going to, again, probably take cues. And your kids may also be taking cues from their teachers or other websites that they visit. So that's something to keep in mind. But whenever possible, try and give people some facts to help guide them, because they will be confused. You mentioned also just learning about the history of the situation. There are some great videos. We're going to drop a bunch of links in the comments underneath this broadcast, and we'll send some links to videos to how explain the history of this conflict to young people. We'll put some links to the book that I mentioned, and to some links to how to change your settings on social media, which brings us to reflecting. That's our step 3 here. So once you have the facts and you've reacted to it, now we need to reflect together. If you can establish a conversation at dinner or in the evening or whenever with your child, this is a chance to kind of assimilate the stuff that you've learned and researched and kind of come to some sort of their own conclusion and viewpoint about it. It doesn't have to match yours, but it's nice if they feel informed and they feel like they have kind of their own stance or game plan for how to manage this situation. And then lastly is reset. And by reset, I mean 2 different things. One is a kind of physiological reset, where you might do some sort of grounding or breathing or meditation to kind of prepare to get back into life as regularly scheduled. And also resetting literally the settings in your social media. And we'll put some links in there to parent control stuff, privacy stuff, content restriction stuff, and also how to reset your algorithm so that you don't keep getting sent this disturbing stuff. You can kind of get a chance to take things in a different direction and not get bombarded by this kind of sensationalistic stuff. That's the 4 R's for you.
Nailed it.
Thoughts on those? And I'd also love to hear.
I love those.
Yeah, go.
So the audience got it. I'll pop quiz you if I could, but it's react, research, reflect, and reset. And I can even jump in here and talk about resetting, because I think as parents, we often say like, okay, how do we help? What's an action item, right? And I've sat with my child, with my young kids. I asked them where they've heard this information, what this information feels like for them. Does it make them feel happy? Does it make them feel sad? Does it make them feel angry?
Yes.
Right? We go through the emotions of it. We assure them safety as best as we can, that we're safe here. These are the safe places, that we're your trusted adults, and that it gives them a sense of hope. And then you ask yourself to your teens, right? They're going to be seeing a lot more of this media than probably a 7 or 8. But one thing I like to do is I tell teens, and teens do this themselves, reset the algorithm on TikTok or Snapchat or Instagram, right? Whatever social media that you're using the most. The way you can do that, and we'll have a video about this, is you go to your settings TikTok just rolled this out where you can reset the entire algorithm. So it's almost like they're opening up TikTok for the first time. And now all of a sudden,
Right.
they're not seeing wartime conflict constantly. You can set the timed breaks on your social media. So again, other social media apps will probably follow suit or already have these features, but I'm using TikTok because that's the freshest example of what I've learned recently. Set it up for 10 minutes or 20 minutes. You can go into settings and do this. Parents, if you are genuinely concerned and don't know about this, check out TikTok's For You page. It's the main page that your child has opened up, and it basically is the algorithm. It's the news feed. If you're a fan of Meta or Facebook, that would be the term, right? It shows up in your videos constantly. And just spend 2 or 3 minutes with them going through the For You page with them and say, I noticed that there are a lot of these war clips coming up. And I'm really curious about what you think about them. And that just creates a whole open dialogue. And then you can then pivot to say, do you think these war clips are helping you? If so, how? Or are they hurting you? And if so, how? Again, you can pull away social media, you can delete apps, but kids will figure out how to get it back on their phones, right? They have Wi-Fi, right? So the whole point of this, and we call this motivational interview, is to generate internal change. And if you want your child to not watch violent clips, you want them to become aware of how those violent clips affect them. And constantly having that conversation with them is a good way to kind of start to get the ball rolling. Doesn't, and you can always announce this over and over again, doesn't mean that you don't care. It just means that in the form of you trying to care, it's hurting you more. And
I like that.
Yeah, that's what I often try to tell teams about it. We're getting close. We have 2 minutes left on this incredibly difficult topic, right? What would you suggest as like a homework assignment for parents or for teenagers who are listening to this? What would they try?
Honestly, I think what you were just talking about is perfect. And I will add, by the way, that if you don't want to be so drastic about it, you can also, selectively either unfollow or block a certain user, or just most apps, I know TikTok and Instagram have this, and press a button. We'll put a tutorial to this in the bottom that says, I'm not interested in this. And it'll just, presumably anyway, it'll let that platform know that that type of content is something that you do not wish to see more of. I don't know how effective it will be. I haven't really tried it, but certainly can never hurt to give it some on-the-go guidance and feedback. Like, I do like this. I don't like this. Please stop showing me content like this. And that's kind of a, halfway thing. So the homework assignment, I would say, is to start with yourself before you try to do this or with your kid. Take a look at your social media and the people and accounts that you follow, that comes into your feed, and get to know what you can and cannot change there. Maybe see if you can make 1 or 2 changes to your settings, to your followers, or to the people you're following, to your content restrictions or suggestions, and see how you feel afterwards. And then that will kind of inform about this with your kid, depending upon their age. I love the motivational interviewing approach that you have. And so I'd say step 1 for the homework is to just do this for yourself. Make an intentional change to your social media consumption. And then secondly, explore doing that with your kid.
Awesome. Well, it's such a pleasure to all of our listeners. Take care of yourself. It is a trying time. It's hard to even end on this topic for today, but we have to. If you'd like to learn more, we will be posting links below just to kind of get the word out there on how to navigate this conversation with your kid and with yourself. My name is Dr. Ashwin Sood. I'm alongside my wonderful audio today co-host, Dr. Jeremy Chapman. And we are Divergent Minds, a weekly podcast held here on Facebook/Meta. every Wednesday, 12:15 to 12:45 Central Standard Time. Thanks for stopping by.